only one boss in this place, and that's me. The HNIC.
Hey everybody, it's Brett with Indie Comics Dispatch, continuing our Head Nerds in Charge Creator Series on Sundays. I am overjoyed to have with me today David Rucker, creator of Decimation Earth and principal at Decimation Studios. And David, welcome. Thank you for being here today, man.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is really exciting. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I'm excited too because I read issue 1 and you gave me a small preview. Well, not a small preview. I mean, basically all of issue 2. And it's just an incredible series that I am loving. And this is what I say about really good series, so don't get offended. My only critique is that it's too short. I want more and more. Like every issue, I'm like, why wasn't there 48 more pages? But I think we know why there's not. So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How'd you get into this indie comic world? Give us your origin story.
So, wow. I'm originally from Ohio, a place called Medina between Cleveland and Akron. I grew up it was a small town. And I think a lot of the guys that I grew up with were really big into comic books. And we used to hang out a lot and draw and everything. And I think it was my younger cousin that kind of pushed me towards getting into comic books more, along with some other friends. And we used to sit around and read them and draw, but I realized I couldn't draw. So I tried to start writing, which I was terrible at in high school.
Really?
Yeah. And then I went off to college and tried my hand again, and then realized that I wasn't very good at it there either. It says something when you have you have a dorm roommate who can drink a bottle of Jack Daniels the night before and write his paper and get an A, and you spend 2 days and you get a C. So
yeah, I would say that's probably a little telling. So you're not lying. you definitely learned something between then and now.
Right. So I eventually, after college, I joined the Marine Corps. I ended up doing 11 and a half years in the Corps, in the infantry. Along the way, I got my master's degree in national security studies.
Wow.
Yeah, I got certified as a fraud examiner and an anti-money laundering specialist, which right now, presently, I work for Wells Fargo as an operational risk officer. So that's pretty much my background right there.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, how I got into comic books with all that education and the things that I did is very strange. But I wanted to create something that I wanted to read, that I would be excited about. And so that's how I sort of fell into it.
That's very cool. That's very cool. That's kind of the common thing that I've found among indie comic creators in doing all these interviews is that more times than not, people are inspired not because they're great artists, not because they're great writer, but because they see a lack of something out there. They see this hole in the comic world and they think I can fill that because nobody else is. And I think that's what's so incredible about indie comics is that it allows those holes to be filled and wonderful content to get put out there.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So you've always been a fan of comic books?
Yes.
So do you remember how old you were and what your first comic book was?
I was just talking to one of my sons about this. So my first comic book, if I remember, I think I was like 5 or 6, and it was the giant size Star Wars comic book.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It was
That's awesome.
That was like this big.
Yeah, I think my brother had that because I remember what you're talking about. I think my brother is a huge Star Wars fan. I am too, but not like my brother. And I'm almost positive he had that. I'm almost positive I colored on some of the pages.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened to it, and I think that was the first comic book I ever had. And then from there, I got into the Justice League. And I remember the first issue I had of the Justice League, they were fighting, was it Mordor, the wizard? The one with the purple helmet with the feathers.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember that was like my second comic. And
wow.
And I remember the day my mother threw it away.
So I was not old enough to watch the original Adam West Batman series, but somehow I had some of those toys from the
Mhm.
original Adam West series. And
Right.
now, those are worth like a ton of money. And I
Right.
bug my mom all the time that she just threw them away. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, what inspires you about comics? To the point that you're like, I see this hole and I wanna make it. Like, I guess what inspired you and made you think like I could actually do this? I could actually make a comic book.
I think what inspires me is the medium itself. How if you can marry your writing with the art, you can tell a
Hmm.
fantastic story. And if you remember throughout history, a lot of stories were passed down through art and oral telling.
Hmm.
The early cave hieroglyphics, even if you go to, in the Egyptians, the old pyramids and stuff, you see hieroglyphics and stuff.
Hmm.
And, you know, the art of telling a story through visuals and words is amazing to me because one panel could tell the whole story. And then you could put three more panels with just three simple or four simple word bubbles or whatever, and you get it. You know where you're
Hmm.
going and you want more. And
Hmm.
that's the whole theme behind what we do with Decimation Earth, which you've read, that we give you enough with the art and the writing that it makes you like, okay, I want more.
Hmm. Hmm. I want to give the Ace Blade on Instagram a shout out. He just commented, inspiration comes from all over the place for me. Danny out there commenting. Um,
That's my boy, Danny Quick, who is
yep.
actually, Danny Quick is actually our letterer. So, mad shout out to Danny Quick for all
Fantastic.
the lettering on Decimation Earth.
Fantastic. And a huge indie comics person. If you don't know
Yes.
the Ace Blade, go
Yep.
check it out.
Yep.
Um, so I love the way you say that because sometimes, not sometimes, honestly, probably more times than not, indie comics creators try to pour too much into their art, their dialogue, their everything. And I love that you say, like with one simple panel, you can communicate so much, and then just adding a few simple word balloons and you get it. Sometimes less is more, and I do think that that is one of the things I love about Decimation Earth is that you are telling a very complex story, very simply, and it comes across beautifully.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank
no
you.
problem. So let's break down Decimation Earth. What's happened so far? Issue 2 just got done with Kickstarter.
Right.
Let's break it down. What's happened in issue 1? What do you want to tell us about issue 2? What's going to happen next?
So in issue one, we kind of drop you, the reader, into the middle of this world. Okay. And so what we do is the future, where we introduce our protagonist, Gideon Morse, is the main story arc. And then we have the introduction of H.P. Lovecraft in the middle of the story, which is the present, which is going to lead to introducing another character of ours, Elijah Reeves. And then we have the past that gives you a little bit of the background of what's going on in that world. So right now, if you've picked up issue one, you've kind of gotten a feel about, okay, during this Neanderthal world, these creatures or Eldritch abomination or great old ones have existed for a very long time. And you're going to see how that is going to slowly start tying in and shaping human evolution from where it is now. And then you jump to the present where you realize that they're still there and they're hiding behind the scenes. And you don't know why why H.P. Lovecraft or his partner, Professor Warren, are even looking into this. And then you get your first glimpse of our big bad, Ozymandias, in issue one.
Very
And then
cool.
and then in the future, we're introduced to Gideon and Paris, his partner Paris. And you begin to understand that in the future, for some reason, the future has been changed by these creatures and that there's a
Mhm.
secret war going on against them.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, I want to pop this up real quick from Concrete Comics over on Facebook. Dave is the man. You getting some love out there.
Thank you, Lonzo. That's my boy, Concrete. Mad love.
Who
They do a
just
lot of
recently
stuff.
released all their issue 2s if
Yep.
you backed them on Kickstarter. And I think you can go buy them now too. If you didn't back them and you were a little slow, um, go grab them.
Mhm.
So I love the story so far.
Mhm.
you are crafting a very unique story that takes place over 3 different time periods.
Mhm.
And I think I said this in my review that a lot of people can't keep track of their one time period story very
Right.
well. So you started off by saying you were never a writer. Somewhere along the way, you've gained some writing skills, man, because you are keeping track of 3 different timelines very well and keeping the reader very interested. To the point where at the end of every issue, I'm like, oh, why is it done already? I want more. So tell us about that. How do you keep track of everything? What's your process like?
So first of all, I think it's the fact that I went to graduate school kind of forced me to write. I had a professor
Hmm.
saying you're writing like an undergrad, step it up. So, and plus
That'll do
my
it.
writing partner Barry Newkirk, who is an actor and a director here. Charlie's out in LA like now. He is basically the focal point of helping me stay focused.
Mhm.
And so we've worked out a method where I don't know if you can see behind me. There's a bunch of note cards
I do.
on the door and
Uh-huh.
across. So what we've done, we've taken all our books. There's 12 books in this entire series,
Okay.
and we've taken each book and put colored note cards under each book.
Mm.
And those books represent certain time periods, certain characters, certain plot points, and with the things that we want to cover in each book. So we've mapped everything out.
Smart.
Because if we hadn't, I would be all over the place. So I have to have some type of structure in order to write
Mhm.
this story. Because, like you said, we're covering 3 different time periods.
Yeah.
And I kind of developed this beat in the story where there's certain beats that I get to. Okay, boom, that's where I stop at the present.
Hmm.
Now I go to the future. Now I go back to the past, and it will continue beats up and down throughout the story.
Nice. I love that. I love that. And if you're out there watching this and developing your own indie comic, take a look behind David at those cards and develop you a structure system like that because a lot of you guys need it. Not a lot, but there's people out there who could use that.
Right.
Um, So, Lovecraft, have you always been a fan of Lovecraft? I mean, Lovecraft has kind of been thrust into the public eye once again for non-horror fans through Lovecraft Country. So I feel like Lovecraft is getting a lot of um, attention again, whereas previously kind of just fans of horror and the mythos behind Lovecraft have kind of gravitated to that. Have you always been a Lovecraft fan?
I'm more of a student of the writing structure.
Hmm.
I'm not a fan of Lovecraft and himself because of
Yeah.
his philosophies and ideals. But
Yep.
if you read Lovecraft, you can't help but come across that.
Hmm.
And I think there's this movement now where people are taking Lovecraft and exposing what Lovecraft is about to help create an anti-racist theme,
Hmm.
especially with Lovecraft Country. And
Yeah.
for me, it was an opportunity to fill a void where we don't see a lot of black and brown main heroes or
Hmm.
diversity or LGBTQ
Hmm.
type heroes. So when I was looking for the ultimate villain to for my heroes to go up against, I thought of Lovecraft, and I thought it as an opportunity to flesh forward into that world and create a world that's totally different from what everybody's used to.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Um, so well, I'll save that for later. Um, tell us, you kind of already hinted at it, but every indie comic has a journey for coming alive, So like sometimes people have this idea for 10, 12 years, or they just get the idea that they want to make a comic first, decide on the content later. What was your journey? What was your path and process to bringing this to life?
It took 20 years to get to where we are right now.
Wow.
But I want to give a mad shout out to my boy Nick Wallach from Evolved Body Arts in Columbus, Ohio, because without him, our first issue would have never made it to Kickstarter because he's the one who believed in us. He was the one who financially backed us to
Wow.
get to where we were at the Kickstarter through by sponsoring us through Evolved Body Arts. So mad love to Nick, one of my close friends from high school. We grew up together, played soccer together. But it was a 20-year journey. And the process was writing off and on. I think I began writing it shortly after I got out of the Corps.
Hmm.
And I ended up with a group of guys, and we were creating this universe. At the time, Lovecraft hadn't come into it, but we were steadily creating this universe. And I think within 6 or 8 months, they all disappeared. So I ended up putting the story on the shelf, got married, had my twin boys, and one day my wife found all my writing shoved underneath my desk at home in our office. And she pulled it out, and we happened to have a neighbor next door that was an artist. And so the two of them kind of got together and started convincing me to get back into it. Fast forward to 9 years now, close to 10 years, here we are. And we've got our second book funded and getting ready to come out here shortly.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And so I just want to give you have a publishing partner, I believe, SpinWiz Comics. Is that right?
Yep, SpinWiz.
That the book is going to be available on. So shout out to SpinWiz. If you don't follow them or have an account over at SpinWiz, now's the time.
We're also on Drive-Through Comics as well.
Okay. I always get Drive-Through Comics convinced with the other one that's out there. Now, does Drive-Through offer just print or digital too? Because one of them is just print and one of them is print and digital.
It offers hardback. It offers print and hardback, softback, and digital. But right now, we're strictly digital.
Okay.
Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we'll be able to get us physically into stores. And
nice.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. So like you said, issue 2 was just successfully funded on Kickstarter. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but when will we see issue 3? Is it going to be a yearly release? Is it going to be twice a year? Is it going to take another 10 years? What's your thoughts?
Well, the beautiful thing about the way I write, when we originally wrote this, it was a total of 120 pages. And so we were able to break those up into smaller stories. So I think we got roughly around 12 or 8 to 12 books written, if we break it up correctly. So book 3 is already in the pipe. It's with our other artist, Bernie Cook, who's doing it. He's already storyboarded now. The script was already written. I just have to get it over to, once that's done, I just got to get it all over to Danny Quick and get him start lettering on it. And I think I'm hoping maybe May-ish that we will start dropping hits about it coming out and maybe have it out by June. But I'm hoping once we get a rhythm that we can release monthly.
Oh, wow.
Hoping.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You know, because
I feel like that's the indie comic gold standard, is getting a book to release monthly. So good for you for at least having the vision and working towards that.
Right, because as you know, as indie creators, it's very hard for us to do bi-monthly or monthly, whatever. But there's guys out there who do a Kickstarter every month to get a book out. You know, and I'm just like, well, I'm not there yet, but we're going to get there.
That's awesome. So 8 to 12 issues, you said, or you have 12 issues planned in the series, right? And so tell us a little bit about your Kickstarter experience. And this was your second Kickstarter. We were talking about this a little bit before the show about how intense a Kickstarter is. So there's people out there who maybe have, a whole series of books planned, and they're thinking, I'm going to do a Kickstarter a month. Give us your thoughts on Kickstarters, what you didn't know before you did your first, what you wish you would have known, some advice for people out there thinking about doing Kickstarters. Let's just talk Kickstarter for a minute.
So the best advice I would tell you, if you're an indie creator and you're doing your first Kickstarter, if you're in the community, look for somebody who's done it, who doesn't, and use them as a mentor. For me, it was Wally McNair, Danny Quick, and Shauna Lean. Who kind of helped mentor me through this Kickstarter process, along with my partner, Barry Newkirk, that helped me through the first process. And in the second process, it was a lot of, the hard part of doing it the second time around, because the first time you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to, you may under promise and over deliver. I think that's what our thing is. We under promised, but we over delivered in what we've done, and that really hurts you. What you get from the proceeds of the Kickstarter, because you don't take into consideration the shipping costs. That's another thing I can say people have to watch out, is the shipping costs for what you need in a Kickstarter. But for me, I think the hard part is figuring out how to present yourself to those to get them to back you. What visuals that you're going to use in your Kickstarter to attract people. And, it's more about people believing in you. So you've got to convince people to believe in you, but then also you have to get a mind frame of when you set up your rewards, you set them up in such a way that people get something that they really like, but at the same time keep it simple to you, because what you're doing with the Kickstarter is to get the funding to help publish, print, and pay your artists and the letterers and everybody else involved. So you've got to be reasonable with the rewards that you offer. I think also on this second time around, it was learning how to advertise, how to push the Kickstarter. I think I was overly aggressive this time. So I think I'll have to temper that on the next Kickstarter. I think the important thing is every time you do a Kickstarter, you need to sit back and look at the things that you were successful at and the things that you weren't successful at, and then use that for the next one.
Very good. Very good advice. You echo a lot of what other creators have said, and I think you're one of the first people, other than Tyrone Jackson, to bring up being overly aggressive in Kickstarters. And there is a balance you have to strike there. Yes, this is your baby. It's a project that you want funded, but you also don't want to alienate people. And I didn't see you being overly aggressive. So I think I've seen other people be way more aggressive than you were. But yeah, I think that's a good word of caution out there. Right. Mr. Mask 91 on Instagram says, what are the essential comics of 2020? Well, I think Decimation Earth is one of them.
Thank you.
But we'll get to I'll ask you in a minute what other indie comics you're reading, and so we can probably answer that a little bit from that also, Mr. Mask. So Decimation Earth, 12 issues. What other projects do you have on the horizon? Any? Do you have other stories brewing that you're going to bring to life at some point?
Well, I've got a project with Wally McNair. We're still working that out. He'll be doing the art, and we'll be working together on the writing. Can't tell you much anything about that because we're still trying to hammer that out, how that's going to work. But that's the one that's on the horizon right now.
Nice.
There's also, I also got an idea for a straight horror comic. That I'm still playing around, but I'm trying to figure out how visually I want that to look. It's going to be mostly set on, it's going to be like sort of a ghost ship horror comic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I'm finding myself being drawn more into doing horror than I am regular superheroes. And if I do more superhero comic books, it's going to be more street level, more grittier heroes. Yeah.
I like that. It's something I've mentioned before, is that kind of before doing all this, I wasn't really a big horror fan. Horror movies kind of had turned me off. Like films like The Ring and The Grudge kind of freaked me out. And so I stopped watching horror movies. But horror comics I found I really like. And I don't know what the difference is for me, but I've really found it. And so the ghost ship kind of premise is kind of something I haven't seen done a whole lot in comics recently, and that sounds really interesting. Very cool.
Thank you.
So to Mr. Mask's point, what other indie titles are you following right now? What do you think should be on everybody's read list?
I definitely think, and I'm giving mad love to my boys, Danny Quick and Wally McNair, but I think King Supreme and Super Bastard are two that should be on everybody's radar right now, especially Super Bastard, given the current political climate right now. I think that's a definite. Concrete Comics, I'm shouting out love to Concrete. They've got a series of books out there that are worth reading. Also, Advent Comics, another one. They've got a good series as well. And The Lost oh geez, he's gonna hate me for this if I can't remember the title. But The Lost Children of
Andromeda.
Yep.
Give
a shout out to him as well. That's definitely one. That's more of a book. It's not an indie comic per se, but it's worth reading.
Yeah, it's still an indie novel series that he's putting together, and he's got deep ties within the indie community. So yeah, I say totally shout him out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's the thing about in this indie community, you can't help but follow other people's work because you eventually, some way, somehow meet them, work with them, or talk to them on a regular basis. And, you sometimes do work on their books. Sometimes they do work on your books. So you get a pretty good insight of what their vision and ideas are. So it's pretty easy to find those that you want to follow and not follow.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the indie comic community right now. There's so many different kind of pods of the community even, and I love the way that they're starting to kind of cross over and talk to each other more and cross pollinate, and it's a really cool time. Like, of all the shit that's happened in 2020, the indie comics community has just grown and done so much in 2020 that I'm like, okay, well, maybe some of this was worth it.
But I also want to add Ace Blade to that list as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you gotta have Ace Blade in your catalog if you got King Supreme and Super Bastard.
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Especially his crazy TikTok videos when he does the Ace Blade.
Those are hilarious. Danny, if you're still watching, keep it up, man. Because those are hilarious. Okay, so we just talked about other indie titles. If you could do a crossover between Decimation Earth and any other indie title, what would it be?
You know, I was trying to figure out how to answer that question because in my mind, because our universe is so unique from anybody else's universe, and we have an idea of how our universe is going to be. How would we cross over into another universe? If I had a choice, I would like to see Gideon in the Super Bastard universe, maybe make an appearance in King Supreme or maybe Ace Blade, or Padre of Gideon and Ace Blade. Definitely would like to see if we could do a crossover of Concrete Comics characters. But anything when you do with crossovers, it has to be done right.
Yeah.
It has to work. It has to fit together. You just can't simply take a character and just drop them in that world.
No.
You know, because I don't know if you ever read one of the crossovers that I've been really interested in is when they did He-Man crossed over into DC, or Thundercats crossed over into He-Man. How you do those crossovers, it's got to make sense. It's got to be cohesive. You just can't have a character just pop in and then pop out.
Yeah. Sometimes you're right. It's just, it comes across forced or not. Doesn't make sense, and you're just left wondering what. Worlds Collide. It was a DC Comics crossover. I don't know if you remember this. DC Comics and Milestone Media did a crossover called Worlds Collide, and while I loved it, rereading it after the fact, it's kind of like, this didn't really make sense.
Right.
So you're right. It has to make sense. What advice? There's lots of people. I was talking with somebody today who's making their first comic book, and wanted to ask some stuff of me. It's like, well, I'm not a comic book creator. Don't ask me. But I can help you connect with people. So there's lots of people out there seeing the current climate on Kickstarter. I think like 30% of Kickstarter funds this past quarter or whatever were from indie comics. Like some obscene percentage of Kickstarter funds came from people funding comics. It's everywhere right now. People are just seeing that they can do this, and it's everywhere. So what advice would you give to others who are wanting to get into, I don't know if it's an industry, but into creating their own indie comics?
Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. You know, go in this with the attitude that, you know, you may not be successful with your first Kickstarter, but keep pushing. Write what you want to read. Believe in what you're writing. Love what you're writing, and have a vision of what you foresee. You know, always, you know, I have a vision board in my office, and on that vision board, I have certain things that I want to see come out of this. You know, like the Ringo. I want to win the Ringo. That's on my vision board. Would I ever get there? I don't know, but it's on there. But that's one of the things that drives me forward to write. Have an idea and a goal of what you want to see. Do this because you love it and you have a passion for it. You know, for some of the guys that I'm really close with, Wally and Sean, and you know, this is what they do. They love it. They live it. They breathe it. For me, this is something that's like I guess my wife calls it a hobby. I don't, because it's turning into another job. But it's something that I love and I have a passion for. Just believe in what you're writing, and you know, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to find yourself knocking on a lot of doors and no one answering. And if that's the case, just keep driving forward. You know, always have a partner, and then find someone that you can be around you that's going to give you criticism. Not going to sit there and pat you on the back all the time, because like with Barry, my co-writer, Barry is quick to tell me, no, that's not going to work. We got to take that out. You're being too contrived here, you know. And also another thing I picked up that's also find a group of people that you feel comfortable with being beta readers.
Yeah.
A lot of novelists do that, and I've taken that for myself in comic, and I send it out to people and say, "What do you think of this script? And what do you think?" I think Wally was one of my beta readers, and he came back and and said, "Hey, your main character is Gideon, but it feels like it's Paris." So I had to go back and rework that. Or I've had another beta reader come back and say, "Is there a romantic relationship here? Because there's a lot of tension." And I was just like, I didn't know that. I didn't realize I wrote it that way. So you need feedback. You need feedback that tells you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you also need to be able to take a step back from what you're doing and accept that maybe sometimes what you're doing is not going to work, and you have to be willing to adapt and change in a direction. Because when you get in there and you start writing and you hit that flow, the characters are going to start talking to you. And when the characters start talking to you, let it happen. Let it go. And then come back to it and see where it is and then go with it.
I love that. That's great. I love the being able to take feedback and get feedback, because sometimes indie comics are so personal, because you see the creator, the creator, there's a person behind this comic. And so sometimes giving honest feedback, I found people don't like to do that because they feel like they're being mean to the creator. But if you give honest feedback, it's only going to make that creator grow. As with anything in life, really.
My wife, Stephanie, is the most honest, straightforward feedback person. She will tell me bluntly if something sucks or is terrible.
That's great.
It's like I'll hand her a script. She goes, "You know what? This looks like you've written this like some TV show. It's so contrived. It's so terrible." My pride gets a little hurt. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll stomp off. And she's like, "Well, if you don't want my opinion, don't ask for it." But she's one of the people I like bouncing things off. And the beautiful thing about that is she's not a comic book fan. She doesn't necessarily read comic books. And sometimes you need to go outside comic books to get some actual criticism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love all that. That's all great. David, tell people where they can find your stuff. How can they support you? When can they get Decimation Earth 2? When will that be available if they didn't back it on the Kickstarter? Give them all the details to support you.
So you can find us on Instagram at Decimation Earth IX. That's our IG handle. We're also on Twitter at Decimation E. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. If you want issue 1 and you weren't able to back the Kickstarter, you can get it on Spinwiz Comics or Drive-Thru Comics. Issue 2, our goal is it's already assembled. We just got to do some additional pages and then do the gray tones to it. And hopefully, I'm hoping to have it out here after Christmas. I'm going to say about February, March timeframe. And that's another thing I want to point out as indie creators. That's the hard part to me, is assembling the book, writing the script, then getting someone to draw it and do the lettering and assembling takes time. So I would say about February or March at the latest, February at the earliest.
Very good. Very good. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I deeply appreciate it. Guys, if you don't follow Decimation Earth on Instagram, go follow them. On Twitter, go follow them. Be in the know for the next Kickstarter when it comes out, and grab up issue 1 right now. And you can get issue 2, you heard him, February or March. I'm looking forward to seeing them. David, thank you again so much for being here, man.
Thank you.
All right, everybody out there. We will be back. Broadcast from the Dispatch will be on Wednesday night. We're having first-time comic book clubs, creators who are about to publish or just published their first comic books, and looking forward to talking then. And then we're getting close to the Christmas holiday, so I actually only have one more interview in December, Jeffrey Johnson of Ennead, which also just finished up on Kickstarter. Yeah. So, go for it, man.
Sorry, I forgot. Our podcast,
no, you're good.
Our podcast, Decimation Studios, is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Sorry about that.
Very good. No, you're good, man. You're good. Plug yourself as much as you want. Hey, it's probably a much better podcast than Broadcast from the Dispatch. I say that about everything because we're just amateur. So check out Decimation Studios. David, thank you again. We will see you guys later.